Welcome to Ceypod Live Next Gen. My name is Chirat Pereira, this is Tisama, and today we're going to be talking about an issue that is very common in schools around not just Australia but around the world. And that is, does AI actually help students? So obviously I'm still in school, you're not, you're in uni, so you have an older perspective. So what do you think about this question, like in a basic context?
Yeah, so in the question of does AI actually harm learning or does it help learning? Um, I definitely think there's a fine balance to it. Like it's a bit of both, certainly. But I would probably say it helps. And there's different reasons for that. A is potentially you've missed out on a lesson for whatever reason. And obviously you've got the notes that the teacher would put up onto your Google Classroom or whatever that they use. And then you can kind of read through that. If you don't understand anything, you can ask AI to further explain it to you. Another reason could be you're learning about something new. Asking Google is quite literally asking AI.
Yeah.
We wouldn't think about it that way. You might go, oh, let me ask ChatGPT this. But realistically, asking ChatGPT or any other AI platform is quite literally the equivalent of asking Google. And so it definitely has that helpful aspect of it. And I found that throughout my learning journey, it became quite popular, I guess, to be used in either context. Probably about 3 years ago, I would say. And definitely I've seen that it's benefited me. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the way you use it. Obviously you would use it in a different context to the way I do, slightly different. Um, but yeah, overall it can help. Obviously it does have the power to help, and it just depends on the way you use it. For an example, if you do use it to get ahead of your learning or to explain something to you, that's different. For an example, if it's just, you don't understand what the teacher's saying or you don't understand the topic, AI can help teach you
Mm-hmm.
in different ways, because obviously it doesn't have one style of teaching. It's a robot, so it can teach in different ways. But then, the flip side of that is if you use it in the wrong way. So if you use it to just do your work for you, obviously now there's also AI checkers and whatever, but it still could go either way. If you're still learning, because obviously the younger students are also getting laptops and they also have access to AI. So if they start using it from a young age and they don't catch it, then it could just harm their learning, even if they stop using it later on. Because the whole point of school is to build up certain skills for older and for when you get older in life. So it can harm. It can harm you in different aspects. So it depends on the way you use it, right? So if you do use it in that context, sure. But then even in other ways, outside of school, if you look at other things, if you use it too much and if you use AI just to help you think, then it's obviously going to harm you. But if you use it in a certain context, then yeah, it will help you.
Yeah, so looking at it in that harmful context, like a primary example that I can think of is especially in like a university context that definitely can be applied for schools as well. If there's an assignment, let's say taking a quiz for example, if it is a multiple choice, even short answer quiz, students have the capacity to be able to just copy paste the question and the multiple choice options that have been given,
Yeah.
put that in, and then AI can tell you option C is the right answer. And that's obviously harmful because you're not learning, you're asking it to do the work for you. There's no thinking behind you doing it. Like, yes, the outcome of that might be you get 100% on the quiz, which is fantastic, I guess, for your grades. But if you think about it, that 100% is not actually indicative of your learning, though.
Yeah.
It might look like it's indicative of your learning, but it's not because you've just asked AI to tell you this is what the answer is.
Yeah.
However, you can do that as long as you learn why that was the answer to that question. It's not great that you are doing that, but if let's say there's one particular question you're just really struggling to understand, maybe you missed the lecture or whatever for that. If you read through the notes that, because obviously AI gives you like a bit of an explanation as to why that is the answer. If you read through that and understand this led to this being the answer, then I guess in a way that's fine. But again, at the same time, it's academic dishonesty that you've used AI to pick that answer. Potentially a way to, I guess, avoid that would be if you have a practice quiz, for example, or like a practice test revision of some sort. If you use that and put those questions in, because 90% of the time, the questions in there aren't going to be in that final test exam quiz.
Yeah.
If you can use those ones and have AI explain that to you, that's being helpful. So you're having that aid from AI, but you're still learning.
Yeah. And I guess, that's obviously correct. But another thing that people probably don't understand as much as they should is that AI can be wrong. Like, it's not like AI will 100% always be right. You know, ChatGPT, Perplexity, they're all different sort of AIs, but they can still be wrong. Like, you know, whatever you do, if you search it in wrong, or if you type it in wrong, or even if it just understands whatever you're saying in a different way, then there's a very good chance it's going to be wrong. So then there's that other question of, yes, first of all, you're not learning, and then you're also not getting the right answers, so then you can't learn. So overall, how's it really impacting yourself and your learning in a positive way? So that, I think it's just, like you said, it can be used for quizzes and you can use it for learning, but it can also then flip into, well, what if it's wrong? Because then you're not learning anything and you're still getting wrong. So then it's just about how AI perceives whatever you're saying, because obviously it's through text unless you use a voice command. But then even then, that knowledge that it can still be wrong still affects everyone. So I think that's another reason as to why AI probably isn't the way to go for school. But obviously, as you get older, and a lot of jobs actually do use AI now. It's no doubt a big part of today and modern society. Many jobs all over the world. I'm not going to name them because practically every job does use AI. So it's about preparing and just knowing how to use it in the correct scenarios and how to use it right. But if you don't, then it will negatively impact your learning. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Kind of going back to your point of AI providing incorrect information. I've definitely seen that happen. There's been times where I haven't been able to finish a reading, but I read like the first half of a novel, for example, for one of my literature classes. And I've just gone, can you summarize chapters 5 to 8 before my next class, just in case I don't have time to read it. But you've got to also have the ability then to read that output and go, does that seem factual though?
Yeah.
Like, you may not be entirely knowledgeable, hence why you're asking ChatGPT or AI for a summary explanation, but you've kind of got to have that critical thinking behind it to go, look at it before you take on that information. Does this sound right? Does this sound relevant to the thing? There's been plenty of times I've had teachers show me examples. They've gone, summarize this book for me, and it's given up a whole plot summary, and like all the characters are mixed up. It has like the general idea, but the characters are labeled wrong. They've taken the villain to be like the protagonist, and it's just not great.
Yeah.
And so you need to be able to have that thinking behind it to analyze, yes, this is correct, yes, this is wrong. Like, to be able to think about it, because you can't just, again, like you said, blindly trust it.
Yeah. So you still got to have some background knowledge as to what you're talking about. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess, interpretation is a big part of AI, and the way you write something and the way they interpret it. And it may seem a bit irrelevant, but, there's been a couple of questions like, in the future, will movies and TV shows, will they use AI? And I think that's sort of the same thing, it's about the way they interpret it. And, a lot of directors would like their exact vision to come to life. And with humans, that's very possible because, you can tell them exactly what you want them to do. You can edit it exactly how you want it to. But using AI once again, they'll interpret it a different way because there's a billion different scenarios for whatever you say, you know. So yeah, once again, it's just about that control. So if you tie that into school and education and the context that we're speaking in, you got to understand it's the way that you use it. So, you know, obviously you're saying that you should always have some background knowledge. So then how do you think it would affect someone with no knowledge in a certain, you know, say test or whatever they're asking AI for? How do you think it would affect them in a schooling environment?
Yeah, so if it's in a schooling environment, and I guess kind of keeping on theme with that, you're trying to read a book and you have no clue what the book's about, maybe it's the fact that you don't just ask one platform. There's so many different channels of AI that you can use. ChatGPT, Perplexity, Copilot, Gemini, there's hundreds and hundreds of it. Maybe it's a matter of asking a couple of them, can you summarize this book for me? And then seeing, all right, is there a common theme coming out of each one? Because if they're giving you 4 different answers, let's say, then you have to go, okay, something's not right.
Yeah.
And then you have to start doing a bit more research into it, find a bit more information, come back to those original responses and go, okay, which one matches the research I've done?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a matter of not looking at that surface level, but having to go a bit further in, or consulting multiple different sources. That way you can, I guess, build a general idea of potentially ChatGPT could pick up on one theme, but then another one like Copilot might pick up on another theme.
Yeah.
And then you can go, oh, 2 different themes, but maybe just pick up the physical book. Because in schools, like 99% of the time, the school has a book room that has all the different prescribed texts that you read as a student. Maybe pick up the physical book you've been given. Read the first chapter. Read the summary at the back of the book.
Yeah.
That might also then help guide you in the right direction. So you're not going into it fully blind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another interesting point you made, obviously, about different AIs. So, yeah, if you ask the same question to 2 different AIs, they're going to give you different answers. Like, sure, the basis of it might be correct, but they're going to give you, like, different answers. It's never going to be word for word the exact same. So that's, you know, obviously about interpretation, what we just talked about. So if we just shift away from that, and we sort of just look at AI overall, not just in an education setting, but overall, how do you think it impacts humans positively? Obviously, I think we've talked about this before, but keeping in mind what we've talked about today, how do you think it'll affect us?
I think it will have a positive impact because as the years go on, technology is getting more advanced. We have, just in like a real world setting, we have robots that are able to deliver food to the correct tables, that help perform surgery. There's so many different contexts that AI gets used in.
Yeah.
Because AI is not just a, I guess, platform that just shoots out information. It's also in the forms of other technology like robots, like you said earlier, that help do different functions. I think it's definitely on the helpful side of things because it just helps us to make new discoveries, do complicated surgeries, build innovations, all of that kind of things. But the underline that is how students, I guess, grow up and interact with AI, however, is going to limit because if they keep interacting with AI for the wrong reasons of purely to write their assignments, not pay attention in class and then ask AI what this topic meant, if they keep doing that, they're not going to be able to use AI appropriately in the future to be able to ask it, program it, to do something for the better.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I think you're right. So obviously now that people are starting to use more AI, do you think there's going to be a different context in which AI does harm the next generation of people coming through schools and learning because of the fact that they're using AI to do their work or using AI to help them? Do you think there'll be a little bit of a shift in the way jobs are performed in the future, or do you think it will just relatively stay the same?
I think there is going to be a big shift, whether people like it or not, unfortunately, because realistically, it's more cost effective for businesses, for companies to use AI, to use robots to do manufacturing, packing, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have to pay them any salary, because the robot, I guess, works for free in a way. You don't have to deal with, if someone pulls out for sick leave on the day of a big order being needed to pack, or a big order for like food, for example, being needed to done. If someone pulls out, that causes issues from the back end of, I don't have enough staff to host this event, to do this thing. And so in that sense, it's more cost effective and business friendly, I guess, for companies to replace humans, unfortunately, with AI.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is, despite it being cost effective, if something does go wrong on the day, let's say not every code built for a robot, built for AI, is going to be perfect. It's apparent when AI platforms right now put out the wrong information, right? Because it's not perfectly programmed to learn, I guess. It's not able to change something on the fly. You don't have that quick decision making because it's programmed to do the same thing continuously. So in that case, despite it being cost effective, something goes wrong, a robot malfunctions, that then heavily impacts a company, a manufacturer, because if one small thing goes wrong, that impacts quite a lot of things.
Yeah, okay.
So in that sense, while I think AI is going to replace some jobs, I think companies are still considering to have humans involved, because I think that we can find a fine balance in between where humans are still there to oversee that and support that, because there are skills that you can't teach a robot, but also implement that artificial intelligence into their companies, organizations, to help obviously A, cut costs, but B, make things more efficient.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, obviously, that is going to be a huge part of the future. So going back to the question of, does AI actually help students, or does it, just slow down their learning? Do you think that maybe because the future is full of AI, maybe that kids using AI now will just prepare them for the future? Whether it's not exactly doing a job, but if it's just, using AI to help them in the future? Or do you think that, learning in school is different to when you have a job, and, when you get to the job, then you should use AI? Because obviously you're older, so you have a different perspective on it than I do.
Yeah, so in terms of, are they learning skills they can use in the workforce? I think if they use it correctly, they are. It's very subjective because it differs from student to student, from child to child. It depends the approach they take onto it and what they do with the information they're given. If a student grows up using AI appropriately, in the sense it's asking it, I guess, open-ended or specific questions that help them grow. It's not, can you write me an email to send to this person? It's what kind of things do I need to include in an email? I think if they build those, soft skills in a way.
Yeah.
Asking those, thoughtful questions, not just answer this for me. If they're using it to, build knowledge, I think they're able to use that in the workforce to help them thrive in whatever job they go into. And that impacts their communication, because if they keep relying on AI in the harmful side of things, to specifically write an email, a text message, a report for a certain context, if they keep relying on that and they're up in front of someone presenting something and they ask a question, you're going to freeze. Yeah. You're going to freeze and then be like, oh no, how do I reply to this?
Yeah, okay.
I think it will help, but you just got to use it in the right context.
Yeah, okay. So that sort of just obviously goes back to what we're talking about. So we are running low on time, but how do you think that, in uni, AI usage differs from using AI in schools?
Um, I feel like in school you have a bit more time and it's very structured. Like, there's not a lot of flip learning, is what the term is called, where you do the learning at home and then come into class to discuss. At schools, there's a lot of teachers standing at the front of the classroom teaching you things, which I
Yeah.
think is a great thing because that allows you, while learning, if you get stuck on something, to ask the teacher before you move on to the next bit of it.
Yeah.
Like if you're solving a maths problem, for example, if you're solving, I don't know, some complicated maths equation that requires you to do certain steps, if you get stuck on the second step, you can't really move on to the third one
Yeah.
without understanding how to solve that second step.
Yeah.
So in that case, like it's very different because at uni, you have to do the learning yourself. Even if you don't understand that step that you can't figure out for whatever reason, it then changes because then when you go to uni, then you're stuck. And so, how would I put into that? I think it's very different at uni because there's a lot more self-led learning.
Yeah.
And so in that case, AI can help students to, I guess, in lectures, help them take notes because there's lots of platforms for uni students that you can like record your lecture while you're sitting in that class.
Yeah.
That helps put together the key notes because sometimes your lecturers, professors go on tangents, and
Yeah.
I've been there. Well, they'll be talking about one concept, but then they'll find some life story linked to it, and they've gone on a little tangent about it. But it's really, I guess, a real life example of it, but not really relevant to the context that you're
Yeah.
learning, content you're
So it
learning
just
in
helps
class.
separate stuff, and it helps
Yeah.
make your learning efficient. Yeah.
Exactly. So, in that case, it's very helpful. But again, it just depends how people use it, and it all comes down to the way you choose to approach it.
Yeah. So I think that's a good point. Yeah, I think um obviously the learning styles of both uni and school are very different, and so the context in which you use AI will also be very different. So yeah, I think that was a very good point you've made. Okay, so we've run out of time for today's episode on Ceypod Live Next Gen. So today, obviously, we talked about how AI will impact students in both school and university, both negatively and positively, and how AI will continue to shape our world and our future. So join us next time when we talk about another interesting topic.